Welcome back to Enlighten Up for episode 69, The Hologram Never Lies, Awakening Schizophrenia, and Multidimensional DNA with Jennifer Hough. Jennifer is a seer, alchemist, author, and facilitator of Awakening, and we're so excited to have her join the show here at Enlighten Up. The conversation was so fun, it flowed, and there were a lot of laughs. In fact, one of the really fun laughs happened before we started the show. However, I was recording, so I'm going to slip that in just a moment. But before I do, I want to let you know what you can expect in this upcoming episode. Have you ever felt like your mind is going crazy, that you don't have control over who you are anymore? Do you feel a little bit schizophrenic? Well, we're going to talk about awakening schizophrenia and what that actually means. We're also going to talk about the space that science has yet to really explain, the dark matter, all that space between all the atoms and all of the space within the atom. We're also going to talk about how information is delivered via photon packages of light. What does that actually mean? And the hologram never lies. And it's going to be time to get vulnerable, because that allows us an instant access to infinite wisdom. We're going to talk all about that. But before we get into the show, I want to let you in on a little laugh that we had just before we started. All right, well, we've started recording, which we're obviously going to edit this part out, but just want to check all of our waves, and we're all doing good.
Wave.
So, Jennifer, Lisa, and Brian. Lisa is my best friend, and Brian is also
my best friend.
I knew you were going to say that.
Co-best friends.
We're co-best friends.
Aww.
They're married. Brian and Lisa are married.
Uh-huh.
And Brian, I think I told you, is our skeptic.
Excellent.
But
Yes.
She pronounces it asshole.
It's close.
Yep, that's another synonym for it. Oh, bless Brian's heart. He is one of my co-best friends, and our little skeptic does take a little bit of heat every now and then, because he does have to play a little bit of a villain on this show, but he has a big heart, and we're always thankful to have him here. So without further ado, let's jump right into the episode and hear what Jennifer has to share with us. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Enlighten Up. I am Nicole Frolk, and I am joined by my beautiful co-hosts, Lisa and Brian, to discuss all things spiritual. We have obviously very different paths if you're familiar with our podcast, and we love to mix it up with wide-eyed beliefs and a healthy dose of skepticism. Today, we have a really fun show set out for you. We have Jennifer Hough, who is a seer, alchemist, author, and facilitator of Awakening. She's going to be joining us today, and she's going to be talking about her ability to see people holographically. And this evolved as a result of running one of the largest holistic nutrition clinics in Canada called The Vital You. The ability evolved from medical intuition, such that she could witness individual lives, histories, and the collective societal status in holographic form. Jennifer, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you on here with us today.
Well, I'm so excited to be here myself. I love that it's also about skepticism, because actually that was a huge part of my journey, is being unbelievably skeptical of my own self. So I like it.
You know, your journey definitely didn't start off with you being able to see things holographically. You had a much different life before now.
Oh yeah. I was. I grew up in my mom was a teacher. My dad worked for a big carpet company, and we had like the middle class upbringing. I rode my bike to school. Very, very shy. Had eye operations when I was younger. I mean, I was pretty withdrawn. Always the tallest person in my class. The only two things I remember that even remotely resemble how I feel about life now are one thing is that I remember feeling like I could fly, and I could fly above the earth and see what's really going on. And I also remember being able to actually have a conversation with my dog, not a pretend conversation, like an actual conversation. So, those two things didn't last very long, because as soon as I told people I could do them, of course, they shut it down and said, "You crazy. You crazy little 5-year-old. You crazy. You got to stop that." So I did.
What were some of the things you learned from your dog?
They're very simple and they don't think about much. Basically what you see is what you get. I want to play. I want to have fun. It's basically what you see, they are just very incredibly loving. At least my dog was. I can't say every dog is, but my dog was incredibly simple and just loving and snuggly, and exactly what we think of them is pretty much how they are. So,
Well, I know we're going to get into your journey here in a little bit, but have you tried to talk to animals again?
Oh, dude, I do it all the time now.
Oh, okay,
all
good.
the time. Yeah, that's definitely one of the. It's one of those abilities that every person has to be able to commune directly with nature. I mean, we're part of nature. We should be able to do it. But yeah.
I communicate with rats via BB gun.
Wow. That's pretty direct communication.
I get my message across.
That is, yes, nothing like bypassing the kind of intuitive nuances.
We have a little rat problem over here.
Oh, okay.
Too much information, Brian.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Thanks for sharing.
Oh. So you said that you were the tallest in your class. That's funny. I was the tallest in my class like every year up until grade 9. And I'm wondering, Lisa, because you're tall, were you?
I was the second tallest person in my graduating class.
Yeah.
Boys and girls.
Isn't that interesting? Wow. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
There were only 150 people in my graduating class, though.
That's still pretty, second out of 150. That's still pretty big. Yeah, I gotta say that there's a thing about being tall too, because you're projected upon as being smarter and older. And I think there's something about living into that sometimes. I didn't realize that was the soup in which I swam, but I definitely felt that expectation that I was wiser than my years sometimes.
Well, not only that, but you can't hide from anyone. Everyone's always got their eyes on you, so you can't like sneakily do anything.
You know what else is really cool though? When I didn't realize this until one of my very best friends is Filipina, so you can imagine she's like 5'1", and what's interesting is that I just saw that I actually really can see things from where other people, from a place that other people can't, because I'm tall. It's like you can see the situation in a room. You can see how people are getting along. And when you're not as tall, you're actually in it rather than above it. And I actually think that's a very physical thing that leads to a skill set that is extremely useful.
So what about all our short listeners? What do you have to tell them about their superpowers?
Well, that's not like a cosmic superpower. I think that's just a learned human being in a body on a planet kind of superpower. That I think when you're short, there's a whole bunch of other skills, but that really doesn't have to do with superpowers.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so take us to what was life like for you before you kind of broke into all of this and opened up with your gifts?
Shy, insular, although sometimes I couldn't keep my mouth shut. So I was in my confirmation during, so my mother ran around trying to figure out which denomination of Christianity, Protestantism, she was going to, take on with us. And so I went to United and Anglican and all sorts of different churches. And I remember when I was getting confirmed at 12 years old, just to give you an idea of how I was. I had glasses, I was pretty insular, but I had a very powerful BS meter, even at 12 years old. And I remember the minister who was confirming us saying a bunch of stuff, and I knew he was saying it by rote. And he was not into it. He was not being philosophical or intelligent about what he was saying. And I could just feel he was full of, like he just wasn't thinking about what he was saying. And so I called him on several things, which you can imagine went over really well. Mm-hmm. This 12-year-old little punchy little thing asking this poor guy in a room full of almost teenagers. But I didn't let him get away with not, I just questioned everything he said, and I got confirmed, but I spent most of the time laughing, which was really arrogant, given that arrogant, I don't know what the word is, whatever it was, from a very shy 12-year-old, it was pretty funny that I would be that way. And then I went on a little quest until I found my physics teacher in grade 13 in Canada. At that time, there was grade 13, there isn't anymore. But Dr. Koja, big, round, cool, really cool African dude. And he just told me so many things about physics. I think when he came from Africa, I think he was quite an advanced scientist, but he couldn't get that kind of job when he came to Canada, just through immigration and the skill sets. He needs to go back to school, so he just decided to teach high school. But he was brilliant, and he taught me he opened the doorway for me to making what some would call spirituality make more scientific sense, because much like Brian, I am extremely skeptical. So I needed to know that there was some evidence of something greater than us and where we go when we die and all that kind of stuff. And he was really super helpful. At least he opened doorways to answer some questions.
Nikola Tesla once said, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in one decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence."
Oh, I'm so glad you used the quote I sent you last week.
I love quotes, and Nicole sent me that quote.
That is so, well, you know what the cool thing is? When you look at human beings or anything, when you look at a door, when you look at my nose, when you look at the beautiful sunset I'm looking at outside, all that we see, hear, feel, taste, here in 3D is 95% stuff that scientists don't even know what is dark matter. It depends on which scientist you ask. Some people say 86%, some people say 95%. I've heard other people use the 99.139% of us is not understood fully. And so, and where that exists is in the space between the atoms, So if you guys remember science class, there's the nucleus, and then there's the electrons that go around the nucleus, and the protons in the middle of the nucleus, and there's neutrons and all that kind of stuff. And so what happens is these electrons go around this thing in the middle, but what's between the middle and the electron, and then the next electron, in the next valence shell, like what's between all that? And that forms up way more of the electron or way more of the atom than any of those little particles do. And then what about the space between the atoms? And all of a sudden, we're looking at a reality that looks far different. So Nikola Tesla makes a lot of sense to me when he says that, because we're not really doing a super great job, scientifically speaking, of studying most of what we are, which is, we call dark matter only because it's dark to our own noggins. We don't know what it is. And that's the cool thing. I get to look at what that looks like. What some aspects of that dark matter look like in the realm of future potentials and the thought forms that form our history. So,
and how do you do that? You said you get to look at that. I assume you mean you're seeing that. Is that a part of one of your gifts?
Well, there's a few things I would say about that, Brian. One is, I wouldn't even say it's a gift, because I can tell you when I first started being able to do it, I was pretty freaked out. So it didn't occur to me like a gift. It occurred to me more like a huge disruption to my life that I would rather just not see what I'm seeing. And so when I say see, I'm talking about
understand.
You just had to ask that question. Okay. So
I know, I've read your bio, so I know a little bit about what you do. And when you said, and you're right, my mind immediately went when you said, and I get to see that. And I didn't know, okay, are you saying you just understand this idea?
I love that you asked the question, actually. I'm just being silly because okay. Do you have kids, Brian?
Yes.
You know how sometimes you have instincts about your kids and what they're up to
Sure.
and how they're feeling and all that kind of stuff? That's the kind of seeing that I'm talking about. So how that information gets translated to you is partially the doorways open because you have experience with your kids and you have a history with your kids. So obviously you're kind of aware, like doorways are open to seeing certain things because you're used to being around them and you sort of have been trained a certain way about them.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other things that you couldn't possibly know just because you've had experience or you've lived with them. And so my question was, I'm getting all these things. I was running this huge nutrition practice. I was seeing loads of people, and I was starting to get super instinctual about their past and super instinctual about the trajectory they were on. And they're like, "How do you know that?" And I didn't know how to answer the question. I was like, "I don't know. How do I know that?" I have no idea how I know that because it was freaking me out a bit. And so I started delving into science, and I looked at a study from Germany, and then I looked at a study from Russia because of my physics teacher. I wanted to know the science of everything. And I started to, the first dive into this was looking at photon packages of light that in nature, all plants emanate these packages of light that come out of them as living bodies. So it appeared that they were talking to each other that way. So in other words, these photon packages of light that came out of the plants were received by other plants and other things, and those photons contained some form of information. So, and they didn't know what that information was, nor did they understand it. But I started to realize that the way that I, quote unquote, see is that I'm actually seeing with my cells, because what I started to see is that human beings also emanate those same photon packages of light. As it turns out, that was true, but I knew it even before the scientific studies came out because I was looking at it. I didn't know to call it that, but I was watching that happen. So, but I wasn't seeing with my eyesight. I was seeing with my cells. And since we have like somewhere between 30 trillion and 75 trillion cells, depending on, again, which scientist you ask, that's a lot of cells, no matter how many trillions there are. And since your cells have receptor sites that can receive photon packages of light, it's like, oh my God, we actually sense more with our cells than we would ever sense with our eyes or ears or taste or touch or smell. And I started to realize that this is a form of sight, but it's not a form of sight that paints me a picture with my eyes.
So what I've understood, probably just within the last year or so, is that our consciousness is embedded in our cells. And so that description of what you said makes sense to that idea.
Well, what does consciousness mean to you?
The all-knowing, everything that's ever been and is and will be is consciousness.
Yeah, so I would say it that the access to innate wisdom that lies in consciousness is bridged through ourselves, and subatomically we actually are made up of mostly consciousness. But the conduit to access that consciousness lies in our cells. So you need a bridge, because we're in 3D, right? And we're talking about information and innate wisdom that lives in multi-D. It lives in many other realms other than 3D. It's that other 95% or 86% or 99%, whatever. But it's that other majority of us that contains the wisdom of the ages, contains the Big Bang, contains every atom that ever got created and uncreated. It contains the entire history of the universe and what's possible. And that's what exists between our atoms, right? All that information is right there. It's of us. But you need because we live in 3D, our consciousness is expressed in 3D. In order to bridge to that information, you need to build some kind of infrastructure to be able to access the innate wisdom that is just there. Like, that's what my physics teacher taught me. All of the wisdom that's ever been, whether a human being knew it or not, whether if an atom experienced it or an ant experienced it, all of it exists somewhere. It's accessible. And so we have to build that bridge to that consciousness. So yes, our cells have consciousness, but go smaller, because it actually is in the subatomic space of everythingness. That's where that consciousness is. The importance of the cell is that's where the bridge is. The bridge is contained in the DNA. The bridge to that greater wisdom is in that DNA. And it's being able to access the information is actually a language. If you think of it like learning Japanese, you have to think differently, or like, say, I don't know, Hebrew or Persian or something, because some of those characters, if it was Chinese, it'd be written, a certain way, or you have to think differently. Some of those languages are written backwards,
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if you think about being able to speak the language of your greater wisdom, it's an entirely different language. It can be learned, but it can't be learned when you're in survival mode, because if you're going to access infinite wisdom only is interested in your thriving. So if you're going to try to survive the rest of your life, then you're going to end up only mastering the skills of being three-dimensional. If you actually want to truly thrive and go direct with infinite wisdom, where answers that are completely nonlinear and get you quantum results are, then you have to be willing to not know what you think you know, right? Feel a little unsafe sometimes. So
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah, and I loved how you were talking about the bridges of the DNA to consciousness. Because so for all our listeners, and to Lisa and Brian, Jennifer and I've had one or two conversations already, and we were talking about bridge building, and how that's kind of like what you're doing is you're helping to build bridges for people to understand what's going on with everyone as they're coming into more self-awareness, awareness of what's going on around them, and helping them understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, in the world of bridge building, okay. Even yesterday, we've been doing something called, it's just in a library. It's called the 30 Days of Awakening Activations, I think. But we were talking recently on about this idea of the polarity that's happening right now, and that people have been judging, the polarity that happens on this planet, between men and women, in politics, in every area. And that polarity is an interesting thing, because the more clear the beginning of the bridge gets, in other words, the more uncomfortable you get with the way much of existence is, the more clear the beginning of the bridge is, and the more clear you get about what you desire and what you want as a result. So the end of the bridge becomes clear too. And in consciousness, as soon as you know the beginning and you know the end, consciousness is already working on 1,000 different ways you could build the bridge to a different reality. And most people spend their time complaining about the beginning of the bridge, but they never get on with actually. See, in physics doesn't care. There's no time and space. So in the field, when you activate a new possibility, by actually seeing a new reality for humanity and allowing the crappy times to clarify your desire, we were born to create. So we get to create these new realities from that multiverse where all possibility lives. We actually get to pull out of that which is not yet 3D and create a new reality that hasn't yet arrived in 3D, but it gets to become potentialized by our attention to it. And we're so busy whining and complaining about what is, that of course nothing else gets created, except for, a few really smart people, probably like you guys. But,
just Brian. Brian's the only smart one.
Well, I was going to appreciate Brian because, you guys are saying he's a skeptic. I'm a skeptic too. And here's the thing. Skeptics are really curious. Well, if they're not too jaded, they get really curious. And then the other thing is skeptics end up being the ones that build the best bridges because they ask enough questions that the mind is at peace, that you can actually build what you want to build. Like you can take more people along with you because skeptics ask enough questions to give the mind enough understanding that you can actually go on the journey without resistance.
I'm the most open-minded one here.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a no on that one, Brian.
No. Actually, will agree with him to a degree. I believe there's
good. Okay.
There. I will give him that. I will. So tell us, talking about all this bridge building, what are some of the common pitfalls that people face when they're trying to build a bridge, or what's preventing them from building that bridge on their own, that they may need someone like you to come in to help them see things in a different way?
Well, first I want to talk about building bridges on your own at all. And like this crazy idea that we have, I was standing in London, England, and I had just finished teaching a program. And I was going on the tube, the subway basically, and I had my bags with me. And half the elevators in the tube don't work and the other half don't have elevators. So I'm carrying all these bags down tremendous amounts of steps. And somebody asked me if they could help me with my bags. And I said, no, I've got it. And I did have it. But I realized what a freaking idiot I am. Like, of course, help me with my bags. Right? Like, please help me with my bags. And I realized I did that everywhere. I was this, island, this solo, somehow out to prove that I could do it. And there's some kind of like peace, love, and the first world way. I was going to say the American way, but it really is, and I'm Canadian, by the way. So it's like, it's the first world has this strange thing that somehow you've got to be the one. You've got to go out and prove something. You've got to do it. And if you receive any assistance, well, it's not you doing it, is it? So then you haven't really proven anything because you've gotten all this assistance, blah, 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 blah. So first I want to say that the paradigm, consciousness never designed it that way. It never designed us to be solo artists. That is the most certain way that you are going to sabotage yourself because you're not. So I just want to say that up front. Because it's a pet peeve of mine, like that just in watching, only because it was my own foible, that I was so fiercely independent, which was a great way of not getting hurt.
But that's not the only reason that's happening. I would say when I lived in China, if you ask somebody in China, like I would often, see a young woman, they carry huge suitcases in China, and they're like walking down the stairs. I was like, can I help you? No. And it's because they don't trust other human beings. They think you're going to run off with their bag. So it's not the only scenario, but I hear what you're saying.
Well, again, independence as a protective mechanism. That's a perfect example of what I'm saying, right? It's like, that's why they're not letting you carry their bag, because they don't want to get hurt. It's like, I'm not making myself vulnerable to you, so I'm going to take my own bag. Screw you. So, but the problem is so listen to this, Brian, you'll like this one. When you actually make yourself invulnerable by being independent, you not only are you not open to the contribution of others so much, and not only are you not open to sharing your deepest, darkest, you also are not open. It's the same opening to the entire universe. Meaning, if you want to go direct with infinite wisdom, if you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable to others, you're also not allowing yourself to be vulnerable to infinite wisdom. So there, it's a thing. Like, it really is a thing. So, but I want to answer, that was Lisa, right? That you asked the question. Oh, it was Nicole. So Nicole, so it's like, why would somebody need me? I would even make it even bigger, Lisa. I would say, because it's a great question. Like, I would say, why would anyone need anyone? Like, right? Like, why does anyone need anyone else? Well, because actually, just let me see if I can drum up. I really want to give a really good scenario. So in a program not so long ago, we were all sitting in a group of, I don't know, probably like 20 people or so. And it was a very vulnerable conversation because that's a space we like to create. And it's interesting because, yes, of course I'm a seer. So what I do is I'm able to see what's going on with someone else very, very, very deeply. And I see the future trajectory of where their life is headed based on the choices they've made, and assist them to understand what truly happened to them in the past, such that their future is freed up to go in the direction that they were designed to go, to be able to get on purpose with clarity and have it be easy and much more fulfilling. And so we were in that kind of a group. And there was a woman there who had, it's so funny how vivid, looking at it right now, it is. Like, I'm looking at the hologram of the group. And so this woman's from England, and she was over in Asheville, North Carolina. And she said that she had cancer, like bowel cancer. And she's a nurse. And I'm telling you, this woman is amazing. She's won awards. She's just the most humble human being I know. But she's been through hell in her relationship. She's been through all sorts of drastic things. And as she described her life very vulnerably and all the pains she had been through, what happened is, like a tuning fork, because all of those stories and all of our hurts and all of our pains live not only through the voice and the sound and the story of it, but also in frequencies and tones and basically shapes that are emitted through photon packages of light from human beings as they're telling the story. And most of the story emanates out of people in those codes. That's why we get instincts about people. It's why you get instincts about kids. So you start to feel what they went through much bigger than just the story they're telling verbally in 3D. So then what happens is there's someone on the other side of the room that's starting to shake because she so gets this incredible story of the woman from England. And she's starting to integrate with deeper truths as the woman is talking about her issues. And so then as I'm facilitating this woman from England, we'll call her May. Okay, as I'm facilitating May, this woman on the other side of the room, let's call her June, is feeling the bridges that I'm building with May. And all of a sudden, May's healing becomes also June's healing and a few other people in the room. And when we do it together, what happens is an exponentiation of each other. And because I'm able to see, and nobody needs me. There isn't anyone, Nicole, that needs me. But since we're so wired to get on with our purpose and to find our place in the world, all I can tell you is that it's a heck of a lot faster doing it when someone is seeing the stuff that's presenting to see, such that we can skip the next 10 years of emotional, backflips that we have to go through to sort of figure it out. And
sorry, I was just, for some reason, Lisa, you're like popping up into my head right now.
Why is that?
I think Lisa has been doing some backflips lately. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
We go round and round in circles, right, Lisa? It's like you start excavating, but like, here's the thing. You can't, like what Einstein said was brilliant. You can't solve a problem with the same brain that created it. Like when someone looks at the issues that you're going through and sees the deeper truth of what you're going through and starts to build a bridge to the deeper understanding of it so that you can go, oh my God, I never saw it that way. I didn't even see that coming. And all of a sudden the whole thing collapses in an instant. That's why, exactly what Einstein said is why it's so helpful to have someone assist you in seeing the deeper truths, because you don't have to spend the rest of your life trying to figure it out yourself with the mind that is at the frequency of the problem, especially when you're analyzing it. It's definitely at the frequency of the problem.
If everyone is thinking alike, then no one is thinking. Benjamin Franklin.
So, see, look at you with the quotes.
I know. Well, so this is actually a common dilemma for many people because they don't ask the right questions because they're so in it. And when you're so in it, it's like I've been there, you know, I know all of us on the show have been there, you know, where you're just so in this kind of place where you can't see really what's going on around you because you're so involved in it, that it is absolutely helpful to have someone come in because you don't even know what questions to ask anymore.
Exactamente. When you're at the frequency of the issue, when you're at the frequency of the issue, here's a quote. Here, let me give you a quote. The issue is never the issue. That you made it the issue is actually the issue. So, Jennifer Huff.
Yeah.
Jennifer Huff. Yeah, TM. So, anyways. So what happens is, because I've worked with tens of thousands of people, like seriously tens of thousands of people that have done that start to embody deeper truths and see what's available on the other side of, I mean, I've worked with people who've had, you can imagine the bridges I've built because people who've been involved in ritual abuse, people who've, like, I mean, the worst of humanity. And the more people I work with and build bridges from a place of neutrality, you know, without getting involved in the drama of it, just really seeing the deeper truths, the more I get to start to embody those bridges. And sometimes when I'm talking to someone to assist them to free themselves up from patterns that are decades old, it'll take me 2 sentences and they already know the answers, not because I'm really good at those 2 sentences are so efficient. It's because they can already feel where it's going, and that's from the photon packages of light. So that's why it's super cool to work with, you know, someone who can do what I can do, which is pretty cool. And Lisa, I'm curious now what Nicole was getting to.
Oh, I didn't mean to put Lisa on the spot or anything.
Oh, okay.
No, it's okay. It's just I feel like it's probably been like the past year, I've been on a roller coaster ride. It's just like from one extreme to the next. It's like like stirring the mud at the bottom of the cup, you know. That's how I feel.
So can I assist in why that's happening?
Yes.
Okay. So have you also been, by the way, I call that awakening schizophrenia.
I told my husband this morning, I actually think I may be mentally ill.
Yeah, I call it, and so many of my clients go through that. It's awakening schizophrenia. Okay, so you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, I'm going to show you the hologram that I see. Now, remember, I don't see it with my eyes, so you're going to kind of have to like feel into this like a story, okay? So feel it with your cells rather than trying to see it with your eyeballs.
Okay.
Okay? So if you imagine there's one reality called you have to work really hard and you have to follow the steps and there's a linear path and I have to be a good person or a good daughter or a good partner or not shake the tree too much or be a good girl or whatever those identities are, right? So there's all this stuff on the human plane, right?
Right.
And then do you resonate with any of those?
Yes.
Okay. So cool. So now we go, and so that's what I see in your hologram. It's like that kind of stuff. So now we go over so that's very 3D. Now, can you get that the good girl paradigm is given mostly by religion? Can you get that? Even if you're not religious, it doesn't matter. It's kind of a religious idea.
Yes.
To be a good girl. Okay. So the next thing is like good partner. Well, if you're a nice person, then you're also going to try to be a really good partner, whatever that means, right? So there's dogma around that too, right?
Right.
Okay. And then there's like, oh my God, I have to be successful and I have to be a contributing part of my family. And also I'm in a partnership with other people in a business. So if you've got any kind of goodness in you, you want to do a really great job. So then you start carrying that, blah, blah, blah. Making sense so far?
Yes.
Not familiar at all?
I'm pretty well, Brian is hammering a nail. So yes.
Right. And so now if we go over to the other side, and okay, so I'm just going to activate something. Just go with me. I'm going to yammer for like a minute or two. Okay. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. I really feel this. So infinite wisdom, consciousness. Would you and I both, I'm just going to ask you questions. Would you and I both agree that there's some kind of creative force that makes stuff?
Yes.
Okay. Would you agree that somehow it's in and of everything? Kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning. It's in and of everything. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay, good. So it has an awareness of everything. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So it must have an awareness of the entire universe, of what's going on the planet, individually of the essence of you, even when you don't have a body. Would you agree with all of that?
Yes.
Okay. So in a body on a planet, before you became in a body on a planet, what happened was this world was going on a certain trajectory. And we were for a lot of contrast, and there were going to be times of great change. The difference between a 70-year-old and a millennial culturally is so vast. It's nothing like what in the 50s, there was way more similarity, and children would do what their parents said mostly. But now a millennial just can't, there's no way. They have such powerful instincts. So a change was coming in consciousness, and you were born into those times of great change. So why? Well, if infinite wisdom, as you said, is aware of all things, everything, all time, all space, and the trajectory that the earth is on based on times that, these are going to be times of great change, then what it was looking for is bridge builders to help humanity get more in alignment with its natural state. So now let's ask some more questions and build some more brain bridges. Would you say that the natural state of consciousness is basically a certain amount of fluidity? Whether a human being would judge that fluidity as good or bad is another thing, but wouldn't you say that it's pretty harmonious with itself?
Yes.
It's in communion with itself.
Yes.
And would you say that it flows basically effort? There's no resistance in consciousness.
Correct.
Okay. As human beings, because we're mostly made of that consciousness in the subatomic spaces, we're wired to find that degree of harmony. So we're looking for that degree of harmony. So when we're not in it, it feels like there's something wrong. Correct, Lisa?
Yes.
Yes. But isn't that great? Because if you feel like there's something wrong, isn't that telling you that the belief system or whatever you're holding on to on the earthly plane isn't consistent with most of you, which is expanding forward? So can you see that on one side, this humanness has a bunch of shoulds, musts, and have tos that are invented by past humans? Can you get that?
Yeah.
Okay, and can you get that? You said yes to your journey flying forward, but the journey flying forward is like you're going from English to Japanese. And Japanese which we could use any language. I'm just making that up. You're looking to go direct with consciousness, and you want to be completely aligned with your purpose, and you're looking to upgrade and find your way and really be clear and dance with all that is, correct?
Right.
Right. And so that language is a language of going direct with consciousness, where you're listening to your cells rather than being governed by the shoulds, musts, and have tos of society and trying to fit in and be a good girl. And it's not that they're diametrically opposed. They're just completely different languages. And, if it happens that being a good girl happens to match with your flight forward on certain occasions, that will be just coincidence. Because in reality, going direct with consciousness means doing what's in the highest for you and all of humanity, because if consciousness is considering all things and is asking us to be in harmony with ourselves and aligned to ourselves, then a lot of that is going to go against some of the shoulds, musts, and it's going to require you to shake some trees and speak some deeper truths, correct?
Yes.
Including to yourself, some of which you don't want to speak them to yourself because it's like, oh my God, that's going to cause change. Brian's going to hate me. Nicole's going to be like, what is going on with you? Or whatever it is, my parents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what happens is we start asking silly questions like, well, how can I fly forward without upsetting anybody else? Or how can I be on purpose without shaking the tree too much? Or how can this deeper truth that I'm seeing be so, geez, I have to figure out a way to mutilate or morph myself to be able to still, and so we have Awakening Schizophrenia. So instead of just letting ourselves be shown the truth, and then, it's a process. So Nicole, you understand now why Nicole and I were talking before about something we do called flight school. Flight school is literally getting on with that second way of going direct with consciousness, but doing it so you don't have to figure out that incredibly, what can look like a complex journey. It's like simplifying it to its deepest core, the process of truly being yourself, of truly embodying the skill sets that of speaking the language of consciousness, such that you can just get on with getting on. And one of the questions I got today was, well, what happens to your family and your friends and all that? And my answer to that is they just love you more. You just love them more. They just love you more because you're at ease and you're happy, because you're not afraid anymore. So that's basically, yeah. So does that make sense to you?
Yeah,
Lisa?
It makes sense. I don't know if it makes me feel any better, but it makes sense.
Well, here's the thing. Doesn't it make you feel better that if the skills to learn the language and the skills to embody the direction that you're going in are totally learnable? Doesn't that make you feel like you're not going crazy? Like you're not crazy, and that's a thing? And that lots of other people feel that way when they start to wake up and get on purpose. Like it's actually totally normal. Doesn't that make you feel better?
Not really.
No? Why? Now, why doesn't it?
Because I guess maybe because it's change. It's like it's shaking the tree, like you said, just having to do things differently and letting go of old stuff that feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Now, let me ask you something. Do you have choice? Do you have a choice?
Yes.
You do. You could stay the same as you were. You could actually not go on this journey. Did you know that?
Yeah, that feels worse.
Good. So you've got the better of two choices. I'm not going to say two evils, because it's really the better of two choices. And the thing is, I promise you, you're not alone. I mean, the whole world is waking up right now because of all the catalysts and all the polarity. Do you have an independent streak, Lisa?
Yes.
is it possible that you could get a little bit more assistance than you're currently getting from people who know what they're doing in this world? Like, are you trying to do this alone? A little bit?
Yes.
Brian says yes, and
Thank you, Brian.
And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so.
I wanted to blurt it out too. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, so not putting you on the spot.
You guys for assistance.
Yeah, but it's different, Lisa, when you let yourself be vulnerable to those that could really, those that have skills, those that have been through what you're going through and can actually activate and assist you with skill sets so that it would be easy for you instead of hard. But the problem is you're going to be seen at a very deep level and it'll make you feel incredibly vulnerable. But then you'll get through it and you'll just cry and you'll be so happy. And so I'm just saying this, but I love that you shared, Lisa. And like, I really didn't mean to put you on the spot at all. But I love that you shared, because what you shared is exactly what so many people are going through. And it's a scary thing. It's an uncomfortable journey. But hear this, the more catalysts there are on this planet, in other words, the more incongruent human behavior becomes with respect to certain beings that are forgetting that we're all from the same source and you don't need to get your power from someone else, the more those beings have their outbursts, the more upset humanity gets, the more the unspoken prayer that this world gets into deeper understanding and harmony. That's what people ask for. And physics is a thing and thoughts are a thing. So those askings are asking for the leaders to awaken. So you do have a choice, but ultimately you won't have a choice. Like when you pass away, all the upgrades you resist in this lifetime will all upgrade when you let go of the physical body. So it's like, dude, you have choice because you're in a body on a planet, but when you don't have a body, all that stuff will upgrade anyways. And yeah.
I'm curious, Brian, what are your thoughts on all of it? Because I know you were like, just like me, while Jennifer, I just want to say I love you. You like hit it nail on from the very get-go. Like it was, to me, it was like, wow, it was pretty spot on.
And Jennifer, I'm okay with all my dirty laundry being aired.
Aw, thanks, Lisa.
No worries.
Yeah, and just know that the hologram never lies. Like it shows. See, the better of a person you want to be, the harder awakening comes, because it feels bad we just don't want to shake the trees. Or perceptive trees. It's a projection of what we think is going to happen if we speak those deeper truths or if we let that stuff go. But in reality, life just gets easier. It's only the resistance to the picture we have in the mind of all the scary stuff that might happen. But, Brian is just going to love you more.
Brian is love.
Yes.
Lisa loves love, but Brian is love.
Wow. Lisa.
I've been making these YouTube videos. I think I have like 10 or 11 out there, but basically I've completely put myself out there. Just like every week I'm having a little breakdown. It's great.
Oh, that's awesome, Lisa. So you let yourself be seen.
Yes.
God, girl. Yeah, that's
just
awesome.
Seems to be getting more intense as time goes. I think it's going to like slow down and get better, and it just seems to keep.
Can I tell you something?
Revving up a notch.
I got to share something with you.
Okay.
I work with some of the most well-known, and I'm not. This is not a horn tooting session. This is like, I just want to tell you, people that you think that are like the most well-known, best New York best-selling, the whole baloney. People that are really out there. I work with those people, and I can tell you right now, they're going through exactly what you're going through. And that's why I'm working with them. Right? So you got to know that they don't go through it alone. They don't. So, like, the fact that you're doing this with your friends, which is beautiful, but dude, seriously, like, I don't go through this alone. I have someone side by side with me. So just, it's good. It's good. It's giving you awareness. But yeah, I don't know if you have feedback for that, but I know that Nicole, you'd asked Brian.
Well,
Come on, Love, Mr. Love. What's your analysis?
I think this is fascinating. I'm really intrigued by everything Jennifer has said. It's really, I don't know. I don't have any experience with it. I know I jokingly say that I'm comfortable in being 3D, and I'm not. I don't see any awakening. I know you guys say you see something, but I think it's real. I think it's really interesting. A lot of what you've been talking about, I can get my mind around it. I think it's really understandable.
Oh, that's so cool. I'm glad.
I can see it.
See, you're a seer too.
With your cells.
Yeah, I'm glad that you feel it, Brian, because it's not, again, for me, this stuff is not woo-woo at all. For me, this is just multidimensional science, and you can explain it. And if you can explain it, now it's, you can actually measure some of the stuff that I'm talking about, those photon exchanges. So it's not, they even translated the photons being exchanged from plants. It's all over the internet if you want to go and look it up. I went to a forest in Italy where they were actually using these diodes, and I don't know how they do it, but they basically translate the energy emission from the plants between each other, and the whole forest was singing. Like they literally translated it into frequencies and tones, and the forest is basically singing. All the trees are singing to each other. Like, it's amazing.
I saw this one video. It was really interesting. It was taking a Venus flytrap and hooking some sort of electrode to it, and it was a TED talk, and the guy was, he was talking about the electrical impulses, the frequencies, in terms of how the plant understands, to close itself when something touches, on the inside and activates like 2 or 3 hairs inside the Venus flytrap, it causes it to close. And you can see, on some sort of, electrical monitor, what a stereoscope or whatever those things are called, and you can see what the impulse is. And then you can see that same impulse in another plant.
Yes.
But it has a different function. And then he connected the 2 plants with a wire, and then caused the stimulus on the other plant, but it sent the message to the Venus flytrap and it closed. It's really fascinating how that's more of a mechanical or electrical thing, but
not really, because so do you guys ever, Lisa, you'll totally understand. Oh, Lisa, you're the perfect person to ask this. So, she's like, oh God.
That was it.
Do you know how sometimes you feel stuff and you're like, what? I didn't even have an aha last night. Nobody even talked to me about anything emotional. And all of a sudden I'm like, why am I having an off day? Nothing happened.
That's my life.
Okay, so listen to me. I want to tell you what's happening with you.
Have you been following Lisa?
No, it's all in her hologram. It's completely and entirely in her hologram. So what's happening to you, Lisa, is, oh God, this is just so cool. So, okay, I don't know what caused you to say yes to your journey. I don't know what catalyzed you or what event happened, but the yes that you declared was a yes to being vulnerable to the entire universe, which now also, you might make a mistake and call it like, why am I so empathic? And you're not empathic. Every single human being they're actually, I don't even like the word empathic, because that's not it's disempowering. It's not what's going on. What's going on is every human being is wired with receptor sites on the outside of their cells. Those receptor sites send and receive, some of them do. Not all receptor sites are meant for different things, but some of the receptor sites are meant to receive those photon packages of light. Those photon packages of light contain information about the world, about other people, about all sorts of stuff. And those photon packages of light actually communicate information. So let's say some dictator in Egypt does something and millions of people in the Middle East react. And they're like, you can't take my power away, and that's wrong, and da-da-da-da-da. So imagine the prayers of millions of people. Those prayers emanate out as photon packages of light into consciousness. They travel around the earth 7 times in a second. So like instantly, we can all feel the shifts in the Middle East. Instantly. And what's happening to you is every time there are surges and disappointments and things happening that are significant, not only where you live, but all over the world, and in realms that are significant to you, like maybe about women or maybe about, I don't know, people that care about animals, whatever it is, you're picking up on those photons, and it's actually throwing you off because you don't know the language yet. Because if you did, and I can give you a little tool here, it's such a simple tool. It's a question. And it is this even mine? Because if you can ask the question, do you ask that, Lisa?
Yeah, I think that all the time. I'm like, what is this? Like, where did this come from? And I actually had a vision today of just, for some reason, I pictured our office in our house, and I felt like there was something in there, and I just had this vision of like, get out of my house. I'm over this.
So the fun part of it is as you speak, as you learn the skill sets, we call them innate abilities. It's multidimensional genetics. That as you say yes to the truth of who you are, that is my little dog Mouse, if you can hear him. As you say yes to the truth of who you are, you actually upgrade your multidimensional DNA to be able to see, feel, and hear things. But if you don't have the skills to be able to transmute, hold on.
He agrees. Mouse agrees, definitely.
He's not quiet as a mouse.
As you start to embody those codes, you start to be able to transmute and understand what's going on. And through transmuting and understanding what's going on, you actually not only dance with those ebbs and flows much more deeply, but you actually start to be able to hear past the things that trigger you. Does that make sense?
I think so. You know, I kind of wonder, I started channeling light language a little over a year ago.
Of course so that's what happened.
And I feel like ever since then, I just am not stable.
So I'm just going to say this live and on air because I just got to say, you need to call me. You really need to call me. You're exactly why I work with people. You, Lisa, are exactly why I work with people, because people are being thrown off, way off balance, because they don't know what to do with what's happening to them. It's happening all the time now. I just had a woman just come from this. She goes, "Oh my God, I'm talking to all my animals. I don't even know what's happening to me. I'm just a school teacher. I don't know what's going on." It's happening all over the place, and we're all awakening in response to the craziness that's happening in the world right now. It's like people need superheroes, and those superpowers, those abilities that come from our multidimensional aspects, it really allows us to build bridges much faster. But when you're being completely thrown off and distracted by these new awakenings and new abilities, you don't get on with getting on with it. And the best you can do, which is great, by the way, that you're doing those YouTubes. It's fabulous that you're doing those, because what you're doing is you're paying forward what you're seeing, and you're also making other people feel comfortable, that whatever's going on with them isn't crazy either. And that's a good thing. And the cool thing is it can be much easier. Oh my God, so much more fluid than what you're going through. So there, that's my standing on the soapbox for today.
Well, that would make sense to me, just from what, everything, like knowing you, Lisa, now for a year and a half. Like, there's so many times you're like, I don't even know why I'm crying today. And if you're picking up on this frequency of other people's fears or pains or whatever it is from like halfway around the world potentially,
okay,
and
can
it's
I tell you
not yours.
something? Sorry, go ahead.
No, go.
I was just going to say, the weirdest thing has been happening to me today. Even as we've been sitting here doing this podcast, I've had this feeling of like an adrenaline rush. Like I was dizzy earlier today. I felt like I was going to pass out. Felt kind of sick, and I just keep feeling like I'm having this adrenaline rush. And
even especially as we're as we're talking,
yes.
Are you feeling that too?
Yes.
That's because this is going to be okay. Brian, just close your ears.
He actually stepped away, so it's okay.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because this is going to sound weird to him.
Now I'm curious.
So, this is where it gets weird. So if you imagine that you've been lining up to this conversation, Lisa, you've been, it's like you want to hear, you've been asking for something that validates what you're going through. And when we get closer to deeper truths and we find deeper truths that get communicated through photon packages of light, what happens is those photon packages surge through your body like energy. And the more we allow ourselves the more safe we feel, the more, and the more we've been asking, and the more we get close to the reason why we're on the planet, those surges will start happening because we're getting more and more in alignment with ourselves. And so we're open to deeper truths being infused into us. And the more we know we're not crazy, the more, again, we subconsciously let in some of the stuff that would assist us to flow with life. And so that's what it feels like to have the physical version of it would be almost like goosebumps, but the metaphysical version of it is really energetic surges through the nervous system.
Yeah, I feel it.
Yeah. And so it's just because of your yes. It's because somehow you've relaxed, or you've made yourself for some reason you've relaxed into yourself a little bit more. And because there's no time, space, reality, and there's no future or past in consciousness, you already knew that we were going to have the conversation.
That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's what's going on there.
So
Wow.
Brian is back. Was there a question for me?
No, I actually said, "Hey, Brian, close your ears. This is going to sound weird."
Okay, good. I didn't hear it.
That's so awesome. See, I love consciousness.
I
It's
know.
so good.
That's so funny.
So it's funny to my dog as well.
I mean, I think I said yes a while ago, and it's just been this, I'm not getting off the hook for it.
So I was going to say, Lisa, I feel like you need to write a reminder on your mirror that you like to get things over and done with fast. But this time around, you're going to ask for help. Because you always say, like, yeah, just give it all to me. Like, whatever you got, I can take it. Like, I'm here. I'm good. and then it all comes barreling down. And
I do ask that. It's true. I do. I'm like, that good girl in me. I just want to do this life right, and I want to get through as many lessons as I can and do what I came here to do. And if it's hard, then it's hard. I just, give it to me. And lately, I think I've said, okay, I've had enough. Like, slow it down.
She did say that the other day.
Yeah. Can I ask you something, you guys? Let's see what your answer to this question is. And actually, before I even ask the question, I'm going to say to you, Lisa, what I was saying earlier is before you got to that place where you were channeling light languages, you actually had been playing in realms that were really fun to you. It's like you could understand them and you caught up to them, and you were like learning stuff and like it was exciting, right?
Right. I was having fun.
But then what happened is your little type A-ness, because I see you, because I'm like you. And by the way, we're 111 into this interview. Just thought I'd say.
I know.
111:44. So one of the things that I wanted to say to you is that your little adorable type A-ness pushes, and you're actually not, you're in a wrestling match with yourself now instead of a dance with higher consciousness. And you need to get into a dance, and that requires skill sets. So pushing isn't always the way. Being in the dance is the way. It's not like you were having fun. So that brings up my question, which is, what's the purpose of this lifetime? What's the purpose of our lives? What's the purpose of you guys' life? Like, why are we even here?
I would love to say to have fun, but I just can't believe that.
Brian, what do you think?
My purpose is to change the world.
Cool. But what's the purpose of any life?
To have an impact.
Okay. And Nicole, what do you think?
Gosh. Sorry, I was just like stuck on Brian there for a second, changing the world.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, right? That's like heavy duty, man. Yeah. So what do I do?
Why do I think we're all here? Like, why is anyone here?
Yeah. Why is anyone here? What's the purpose of living? What's the purpose of an essence to
experience.
Yeah.
To experience, right. Good, bad, ugly, all of it.
So would you guys like to hear my answer to that?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I just had to be different.
Go, Brian, the tree shaker.
I know, right? Brian is a total tree shaker.
So, Brian, put your fingers in yours.
No, I'll listen. It's okay.
Here's my answer. My answer is the purpose of life is actually to live it fully. The purpose of life is to enjoy the living of it fully, or what is the reason for being here in the first place. So when you're pushing, the only reason we push is because we think the purpose is something different than that. Like, my purpose is, like, I'm being so called forward by this feeling that there's something else, that I'm not doing everything that I'm here for. And that's true. That's true of me too. I know that there is so much more coming for me as well, like working with whole governments, blah, 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 blah. And what you got to know is that all three of you, I can see in your hologram, you're like being called by this deeper purpose without friggin' question. You are. And that sense of urgency, when you combine it with, I want to be a good girl, I want to do what I came here for, type A, want to accomplish, get her done, I can handle it, Miss Lisa Pooh, darling, I love you. When you combine that calling with a bunch of identities that don't serve enjoying your life, what it feels like is resistance, and it doesn't feel good in your body. So the cool thing is your body is telling you that the identities that have been running you don't actually work for you, and that higher levels don't give a crap if you're a good girl. They give a crap if you're in alignment and if you are having fun and being fulfilled, not in a hedonistic way, but in a real, like, connection to consciousness kind of way. And sometimes being a good girl i.e., or good boy like Brian who shakes trees. It's like sometimes you just speak deeper truths and you don't be a good girl. So what they're saying to you is it's actually going to stop you from fulfilling on your purpose in the long run if you keep that identity. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, yeah, sure, slow down. But that's not it either. It's like, look at what's coming up to leave. But now we go back to what Nicole said, which was sometimes you don't know the right questions to ask. So the right question to ask in this situation with you, Lisa, would have been, or can be, what are the identities that are running in the background that are causing the resistance to my flight forward? That's the correct question. But that's what happens when you don't get assistance.
You know, Lisa, you and I just remember it so vividly, like so clearly, you and I drinking our wine, sitting on your couch that one day when I surprised you and came over and you did not want me to be there.
Thank you, Brian.
And, yeah. And I said to you, like, you just put so much pressure on yourself. And that I remember I was like, we just need to like get you dirty. Like, you got to be comfortable just getting dirty, like not being so perfect and like getting messy. It's okay to be messy.
Yeah, we were going to go to a mud bath.
Yeah, we were. Maybe we'll do that when you come up to visit me next week.
Frozen mud. You can't have a mud fight with the permafrost.
In Canada, yeah.
Well, it's like probably the reason I see you so easily, Lisa, is because we have very similar ways of being, like extremely similar. So, like extremely similar. Like all of that, everything we just said about you, I so get it. So, but it causes resistance, and there's ways of transmuting all that stuff so that you actually can enjoy the amazing stuff that's happening to you. But right now, it's not enjoyable.
No, I'm not enjoying myself.
You need to transmute that shit.
Yeah, what he said, man. Yeah, easy to say.
Easy to say. I would love to figure it out.
How about you get help to figure it out?
I could consider that.
See, I'm saying it to you because I'm saying it to everybody. You're not alone you're just not alone in that, like, I can fit, like, you're so capable. That's the problem. You've been so capable all your life, right?
Right.
And when you're so capable, the thing is I can handle it.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, because I totally get where Lisa's coming from. You know, I've been there myself where I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have my naturopath back when I was 20, and I was seeing her consistently for a couple of years and then a little bit more spaced out over another few years after that, where I would always go to her. Like, she was kind of my guidance, my spiritual guidance. Anytime I didn't have anyone else to turn to who could answer or talk to me in the way that I needed to like converse with to get what's going on. And so there's always going to be like people around you who understand certain things, but sometimes you need someone who's leveled up more so to really kind of see in and give you a completely different perspective.
Yeah, entirely, Nicole. And so, yeah, so it's all good, Lisa. I just want you to know that there are so many unicorns that feel the same way you do. I can't even tell you how many people are going through what you're going through, and I was sharing with you because really, for your listeners, I want your listeners to know also, doing it alone is super overrated. It's just, once you start getting the assistance on this level of understanding superpowers and innate abilities and how to use them, what's super cool is that you will never not do that anymore. Like, you understand, it's like, oh my God, if I don't see, we're coming into a new paradigm. As everyone awakens, the way we have to awaken has to shift. So as everyone comes into their superpowers, the way we live with the way we can't be alone anymore. We need each other to activate each other. We need I mean, even on a physical plane, on the 3D plane, can't you guys see how important community is right now? And I mean, like, really letting each other in and really understanding each other and starting to have compassion for other points of view. And so even on a physical plane, can you see how that's like becoming very important?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this is the metaphysical version of that. It's like understanding each other and understanding our unicornness and our uniqueness, and that each of us is a piece of the puzzle of heaven on earth. And as we come into that, it is a very different way of living, and you definitely get that awakening schizophrenia.
I feel like I've had it since I was about 16, because I first was introduced to like A Course in Miracles when I was 16, and it's screwed with my head ever since.
Yeah, and what's cool is there is, for I think a place to go with this is like, listen, long before you got there, the universe knew exactly who you were, every single one of you, and each of you is just so perfectly designed to work with each other right now and all that kind of stuff. And in this trajectory that you got sent on based on all of the skill sets you've ever lived in every lifetime, here you are in this lifetime with consciousness and its infinite wisdom, deciding that each of you should be here in this time of great change. There are no mistakes. The universe doesn't make any mistakes. It's literally a bunch of people, not just you, but even individually, understanding that at some point the rubber was going to hit the road and you were going to be on your path. You were going to be in it. You were going to be on it. And each of you was going to have a different nuance of that flight forward and be a different expression of it, because it complements. And so the unfoldments that are happening were always going to inevitably happen. The difference is, if you don't have a context for what's happening, it looks like it's really scary. But in fact, it's only unfamiliar. And if you are made of particles of the entire universe, it can only be happening for you. It can't be happening to you. It can only be happening for you because you are consciousness itself in human form. So consciousness only wants to return home to harmony. But because the mind judges that which is unfamiliar and feels like change, there's upset in human form, because we've been trained to try to survive life. And when we've been trained to try to survive life, survival equals what's the methodology, like the response to I've got to survive is, what's the methodology? What are the steps? Let me get really good at that. I already did, personally, I did it. I had a, 6,000 square foot home, very, successful husband, very successful, had the largest nutrition practice in Canada, had the cars, had the money, had the everything, was very happy with my husband, had a different puppy dog, had a lot of, all that kind of backed onto nature, which I love. But it wasn't enough, because I wasn't living on my purpose. I had to leave all of it because I was being called. So, it's like, I wish I was with someone who understood or at least accepted my journey at the time, but I wasn't. And we're just returning home to be our piece of the puzzle. That's all there is to it. And it's a very unfamiliar journey, but it's not time to separate. It's time to actually exponentiate each other's knowledge so that we can actually be at peace in our mind while we go on the journey, which means that it really takes a village to awaken. So I hope that makes sense to you guys.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
great. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this has been just such a fun conversation. I mean, maybe not for Lisa.
I'm glad I could be the guinea pig for the show.
You poor bugger.
One of us usually is. One of us usually is.
It's all good. It's all good.
Well, here's the thing. When one of the reasons why we love the show and why we started this whole show is to be transparent and honest about our own journeys and not try to make it out to be something that it wasn't. That it's definitely not skipping over rainbows and riding unicorns into the sunset at all times when you're on this journey of self-awakening and everything. And so the only way that you can be honest is to share the good with the dark, like the shadow parts of ourselves. And
I'm good at that.
I think we're all pretty good at that. We've all been doing it. So it's just been so great. And I gotta say, Awakening Schizophrenia is totally going into the title of this show.
Awesome. Well, yeah, it's okay. So one more thing. So that the dark and the light, let's shift it. Let's build a bridge on that one. Because even with the dark and the light, all we're made of is light, right? So it definitely, as Nicole, you so aptly put, it isn't about rainbows and unicorns coming out your butt and, riding off into it is not. That is not what this journey is. But this journey is an incredibly curious adventure that is really meant to be totally eye-opening and exhilarating. Because to your higher selves, it certainly is. But if you imagine that we've called some things the dark, but they aren't. They're just different forms of light. And when you relate to them differently, when you relate to them as just different aspects of the light, different nuances of the light, all of a sudden it's understanding that it's all you. It's like you've been gifted a Ferrari, and just because the Ferrari sometimes turns barfy green, it's still a Ferrari, and just because sometimes someone puts regular gas in your Ferrari, it's still a Ferrari and it still runs, So the point is that it's all light. There really is no dark. There are just different versions of the light. But when you relate to it differently, when you relate to it like that, just a change in semantics, a change in the way we relate to it, it kind of releases a little bit. It's like, okay, like there doesn't have to be a yin to be a yang. You don't have to have pain in order to have joy. You don't have to hurt in order to also know what happiness is. You can be happy and then you can be more happy. You can be sad and then you can be less sad. It's more like a spectrum rather than a polarity. And that's one of the shifts that's so important to make right now on the planet, is instead of making it a polarity, putting things more on a spectrum is actually more helpful to find our way back home to harmony. So just wanted to add that 2 cents just for whatever it's worth.
Oh, it's great. And it's really just about perception, shifting the perception of how we see it all. So, and that's constantly changing as
that's a beauty.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you'll come back on sometime soon because
then you can read Brian's hologram.
I would love to read Brian's hologram. That would be so fun.
You better put some shades on.
Yeah, protect myself from all that love.
Mr. Love himself. I know that you have a product that you wanted to offer our audience members.
Yeah, actually, you know what? What I would love to do is one thing that we did recently is called the Quintessentials of Advanced Awakening. And basically it's at our website. It's thewideawakening.com/QAA, and you can check it out. It's activations, and it helps the brain to build bridges of understanding, such that you can get more in the flow with who you are and why you're here. It's very powerful. But what I'm more thinking, for those that are like, okay, this is deep, or I want to start on the simple way, I actually was thinking more as we were talking that there's something we did for free called it's at thewideawakening.com/3 days, like the number 3 days. And it's 3 days of brain bridges. It's from a 12-day program. And it's so powerful because it allows you to change your relationship to consciousness around money, around family, and I think the other one is around love. And they only take like between 15 and 20 minutes to listen to. And it would be so cool for everyone who's listening to kind of experience the same kind of conversation that Lisa just did. And that's what those 3 brain bridges are all about. So yeah, either one.
Oh, fun.
Those are Yeah, and that's free. That's like no charge.
Okay, well, I'll put the links up for that in the show notes below, so all the listeners can just easily access that. I think that's great.
Yeah, the quintessential awakenings is really an advance, and more like if you want to dive in a little deeper to the conversation that we've had. But I love experiential things, and I think the experience is always really, really good for people to actually feel the shift. But my biggest message is, stop doing this alone. Don't be such a hero. The time for that is so last century. Like, forget it. Yeah.
Well, I love it. It's a lesson I think a lot of us learn along the way, that especially if you're a type A, or and especially just even in this time, women are really being taught to be a lot more independent and to not rely on men to support them. And so there's like this really big push for women. I know I went through that growing up, that you just got to be independent. Mm-hmm. You got to take care of yourself. And as great as that is, mm-hmm. there's also a balance line that has to be understood, to not forget the importance of vulnerability, to not forget the importance that you're not meant to do this alone, and that there's something absolutely beautiful as to why we have communities, and why there's always someone who's there whenever your consciousness is ready to call upon the person. They present themselves to assist you in the way that you need that assistance, and to accept it, to accept it and know that it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that you can trust your own instincts to know what to fully let in and what not to let in. Mm-hmm. And that's sometimes in their past, they have parents or teachers that have tried to superimpose their belief systems. And so they get a little bit skittish when someone offers something different, and they almost get averse, or they push back. And for me, it's just so important in these times also that you work with people, or you get the kind of assistance, or you set up parameters whereby you let people know that you are going to listen to what they have to say, but that truly you're in the becoming of the idea of becoming your own guru, rather than giving your power away to anyone else. Mm-hmm. And again, that's another fundamental for me, that gosh, if we all became our own guru, this world would be an entirely different place. So, I really appreciate you saying that, Nicole.
And it's so funny, like just really, really quickly, at the very beginning, you were talking about someone helping you with your bag. And then Brian was talking about the woman in China who wouldn't let him take her bag because she didn't trust him. A year ago, because, Jennifer, you and I had this conversation where one of the things that I had to learn was to allow people to do things for me. And I know Lisa actually is really good at that in certain things, because I know, like, over the past year, like, she's like, sure, Brian, you can cook for me. Sure, Brian, you can do that for me. And so I think Yeah, but there's certain things I feel like we're more allowing to let people do for us than other things. And for me, it was always like physical activities. I couldn't let other people do the physical activities because I was always trained to be really like athletic and to be number one in that. And so last year when I was coming back and I was bringing up 2 bags of luggage, I was at the subway station. My dad was picking me up I was visiting them, and I realized when I got to the end of the subway thing that to go to the car pickup, I had to go up a massive flight of stairs. There were no elevators, there were no escalators, and I had my carry-on and a massively overpacked luggage. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to go up these stairs? Like, I'm going to be like dragging forever. And this one guy was coming up beside me, and I'm like, do I ask him? Do I not ask him? Do I ask him? Do I not? And then I just kind of looked at me and goes, do you want help with that? And I'm like, yes, I do. And then I was about to give him my carry-on because it was lighter and I didn't want him to have to take the burden of the big bag. And then I was like, no, Nicole, let him choose. And he totally chose the big one. So I was like, okay, thanks. And so it was just one of those things where you just, as we go through, we just allow people to help when we need it and not feel bad about it.
Yep. Amen to that. Absolutely. 100%. It's the ebb and flow of the universe. It's like an activation and making yourself vulnerable to the entire universe when you receive from another. So love that.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This is great. And to all our audience members, please check out more of Jennifer Hough's stuff. You can go over to her website, thewideawakening.com. I'm going to leave all that information, also the link to her videos, to do what she was just talking about earlier. And for all of you guys, please email us in at info@enlightenup.us if you guys have any questions that you'd like answered on the show, if you have guests that you'd like to bring on the show, because one of you asked us to bring Jennifer on. And I'm so glad that you asked us because this was a great show. I'm so glad that you came on with us.
I'm so happy to be here and so grateful to you guys for being so darn vulnerable and willing to have the conversation, and so happy I met you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
All right, everyone.
So much fun.
Well, thanks for being on the show, and to everyone, we will be back with you next week.